Alright, so last time we talked about the various mice controllers. So today I thought we'd look at some kind of the pack-ins that actually came with a lot of the games. This is kind of a neat thing about the X68000, as you know, everyone talks about how great the hardware is, the sound. But a lot of people forget is a lot of the developers, especially like the people at Microsoft, aka Dempa, their software company line at the time, we're also really much into bringing the arcade experience home, and this includes the controls. So a lot of games, they just gave you stuff right in the box, and this is the kind of stuff that's really worth going after, in my opinion anyway. So probably the most obvious that most people are familiar with is the infamous Street Fighter II Dash CPS Fighter adapter. Every copy of this, when new, came with one of these things. And it's actually rather large. It's basically meant to hook up the old CPS fighter stick, but it also does have a standard Mega Drive port for the CPS Mega Drive, but you can also use standard Mega Drive controllers with this as well. So this is a very popular item that most people want. Truth be told, it's actually getting kind of hard to find copies of the game that include this, because since a lot of people want two of these, since this is only a one-player device, you know, they buy a cheap copy online, keep the adapter, and put the game right back on Yahoo Japan and the like. So these are getting harder to find. They were also sold separately. And, yeah, I mean, they're pretty nice. They work great, but they are a little big for my taste, and if you don't actually, you know, if you prefer to use a Mega Drive controller as opposed to the weirdo CPS fighter stick, my opinion, you can do simpler. So another adapter that you could easily get back in the day came with Chelnov here, part of the video game anthology, which was all about making one basically perfect ports to the home systems. And as you can see, every copy of this game, at least when they were new, came with a very simple Mega Drive adapter. As you can see, very simple. It's literally just a pinout changer. And honestly, this is all the Capcom adapter really is too. This was included because, you know, Chelnov is a 3-button game, which the MSX standard didn't support. So with this, you could use the rather easily to obtain Mega Drive controller. And if you're wondering, these are really nice because these will also work just fine with Street Fighter 2 and Super Street Fighter 2. They, yeah, the Street Fighter adapter is a little misleading because you'd think it's some kind of crazy hardware thing, but basically the Street Fighter games and pretty much all the games that use 6 buttons use software drivers to understand the 6-button output. So literally this simple pinout is really all you need, and a lot of people these days just make their own adapters because it's just simply cheaper in most cases. But these are really nice, really small, and yeah, if you want to use one of these as Street Fighter, just set Street Fighter 2 control to the CPSF MD input, and the 6 buttons all work just fine. So, very tiny and nice little, looks like it was made in a garage, but it's just how they did it back then. Okay, so next up is the Magical controller. This was included in the box with every copy of Fatal Fury 2. Only Fatal Fury 2. It's kind of an unusual one. As you can see, it was most likely based off of the Super Famicom controller. It does have 6 buttons with 4 face. It does have one of those old school removable stick things. Overall, this is actually a pretty decent controller. And like you see, I've got Fatal Fury Special on here. It does work with Fatal Fury 1, 2, and Special. And note though, this controller will not work with Street Fighter. It basically works similar to an FM Towns pad, meaning the extra buttons are just kind of on unused pins. So if you use this with like Castlevania, some of these extra buttons will recognize as the run button if you want to pause the game. And I don't know, let's go Terry. Of course, And so overall it's a pretty decent controller, but it's kind of limited to its use. It does play fairly well if you want to play the Fatal Fury games on the system, but let's be honest, there isn't a whole lot of reason to play these. They're pretty decent ports if you have a 16 megahertz or faster system. They're a bit slow on 10 megahertz. I haven't played Fatal Fury Special in a long time. And once you get used to it, it's an alright controller for a freebie. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest here, if you're a person in this day and age that has an X68000, you most likely already have a Neo Geo. So these ports are kind of redundant in the year 2015. Though they are still quite decent, and I mean, the one feature they do have is they do support both Roland SC55 and MT32 MIDI, which is what you're hearing now. So if you're a big fan of the game and you wanted to hear, yeah, I'm not really paying attention by now, you can't tell. But yeah, if you're a big fan of the series and you want to hear MIDI renditions of the classic tunes, it's kind of the most interesting feature these days. Still though, these are pretty cheap, and not the only controller that has the right inputs for this series. So, for cheap enough, if it's cheap, yeah. If you get one cheap, I'd say it's worth trying. But considering that a Fatal Fury Special AES card over here in Japan anyways can be had for about $10 or less, it's not really going to be the ideal version to play. Anyway, that's enough of this one. Let's move on to the more unusual stuff, shall we? Well, moving on, next we got the XPD-1LR. As you can see, it's a dual D-pad controller. This was included in the box with every copy of Ribble Rabble, which is one mind-warping game. Left is the red, right is the blue. This is the practice stage, so. The FM Towns version of this game also did include the controller, if I remember correctly, and they are the same thing. Alright, here we go. Take that. Yeah, this is a game that, oh man, a game that can give you nightmares just the way the controls work. But it does control very nicely with the dual D-pads. And yes, this game does full on require this, but it was included in the box, so. Still, these do come out quite often. They're not particularly hard to get. Take that. Cutting my lines. Anyway, I'm sure you got the idea here. It's not too bad as long as you keep your arrows on the right side. If the blue arrow and red arrow cross, that's when it's like, oh crap, which D-pad is which? But anyway, I think that's enough for good old Ribble Rabble. Okay, so you might think a controller like this would only be useful for Ribble Rabble and nothing else, but the next release in the video game anthology series was the Crazy Climber collection, which does support and highly recommend it. If you're just using the normal controller, you actually have to use the keypad on the keyboard for the second D-pad, which is, as you can imagine, terrible. So Crazy Climber 1 is a very, very old game. Controls are also very, very strange until you get used to it. It's basically, left D-pad is the left half of your body, while the right D-pad is the other. So, once you get into a tight spot, it's real easy to panic. Once you get the groove on, though, yeah, there's really not much like Crazy Climber. But the controls are kind of where the challenge is. Well, I think that's enough for the first one. Okay, and we'll take a quick look at Crazy Climber 2. This one, you can see, is graphically much nicer. Music's way better too. Overall, it's the same basic game though. Don't kick me. One of those games that once you get the rhythm on, it's actually quite fun. But when you lose the rhythm, it's kind of like, crap, what do I do, what do I do, what do I do? Still, big improvement and definitely worth playing. This version does let you pick from the original music and the CD arranged music. This is actually the CD arranged music, even though this is playing off the FM chip. Still, good solid fun. Okay, so the last kind of one we're going to do today is the Pac-Land controller. Also by Microsoft. This was, I think, remember one of the last games, if not the last game in the game anthology collection. And this is actually very nice build quality. This is actually metal, and these are in fact real arcade buttons. Meant so that you can play the game just like the arcade did. You know, very strong. It is kind of the loudest controller ever because it's very hollow, so the box echoes quite a bit. So, you get an arcade-perfect port of the game with controls. The controls just like the arcade. From what I remember, I don't think I've ever played the arcade, but remember it's this one, right? Yeah. This is always one of those really strange games, but apparently this one has quite the fan base. I'm a little young for the cartoon it's based on, but it's different, I'll give it that. But definitely not my jump. And yeah, I know one of these logs can be pushed, but yeah, I dig the graphics in this game. They're simple, but they're very smooth. Parallax really looks just nice. So yeah, this was only sold with the game. Came in a big plastic case originally. The other thing I like about this controller is since it is metal and it's just bolted together with screws, these buttons start to wear out, you can actually replace them. I believe they are soldered, but I can't solder an arcade button. There's something wrong with you. Well, anyway, that's Pac-Land. Okay, this last one is actually a Doujin game, which actually does support the Pac-Land controller, giving you one more game to play with it. This is the X68000 R. This is actually a Doujin port, basically a copy of the old Namco game, New Min Olympics, the prequel to Mock Breakers, which I think is a bit better known outside of Japan. Like, this was made by the DirectX guy, and like most of his games, there's lots of weird references to other stuff just thrown in for fun. You can use the keyboard to select it, but there you go, Pac. So if you're familiar with New Min Olympics, it's kind of like the old Konami track and field games. It's basically mash, mash, mash. And this is going to be really awkward because my hands are all stretched out because I'm behind the tripod right now. I said it's the loudest controller ever, and you really can tell with this game. Oh, that was pretty terrible, but really, you mount this table. It does have nice grippy feet, so if you mount this on a desk, it actually works really, really well. But not going to do that today. So this is a very shameless copy. There is no, I'm actually quite glad this was made, because not only is it fun, but there's also nothing quite like this on the system. Round two. No! Damn. I think I still did well enough to pass. So, well, it's very not original. It's a welcome Doujin game. And for this controller, it's about as good as it gets, really. Other than the, I think the original arcade game did have 4-player mode, but. Whew, 14, not bad. Yeah, even the music is pretty much a carbon copy from what I remember. So, fairly impressive as a port. Alright, this one's a bit simpler, just hit the right button. There we go. It's perfect. So yeah, I'm quite happy they included this because it gives you another, because I honestly enjoy this a lot more than I do Pac-Land personally. Alright, here's where I'm going to screw up. Ooh, not bad. Got greedy. So yeah, there's a full playthrough of Double X Files R. So, as far as these controllers, if they're actually worth getting or not, again, it's going to depend what you want to do with the system. For me, this game alone is reason enough to have this one. I definitely like the Crazy Climber controller for the Crazy Climbers, and Ribble Rabble minced my brain, but... So yeah, I mean, where I live in Japan, it's significantly cheaper to get a whole lot of this stuff. But if you've got an original system, and these are your kind of games, the extras are nice to have to play them properly. Well, I think that's going to be all for this one, so see you next time.